champagne or rum, but she's success with Global.Media.com. Every step forward is a new beat to your drum. Achieve success with Global.Media.com. Let's celebrate it with or without champagne.
Hello! Yeah, the show has started, finally. This is my first show in a week, Scott. Exactly a week.
Well, welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah.
We're normally on here pretty frequently, so that's good.
Yeah, nice. I mean, that's the first time I've actually had a week off LinkedIn, in the last 3 years. So welcome
first
you.
week.
Welcome
Okay.
you. Welcome you. I'm feeling a bit queasy, but I'll survive. Just about, all right? I'll get over it.
Yeah.
I said, great to be here, and great to have myself used for my first show back. So it's a few of our friends in the studio. Let me bring Alexis up. Alexis, welcome. Glad you're here. Zara, can't bring you up until you turn your camera and microphone on. If you're using a Chrome browser, then top left, there's something that looks two opposing lines. Click on that, gives you the option to connect to use your camera and your microphone. You can use one, and so as long as you turn either one on, you just have your microphone on, so you're going to be seen today. But you need to set at least enable your microphone. Same as you did, right? We need to set your microphone and your camera. So just work out how to do that on your computer. And I can bring you on stage. But you're here, I can see you. Hopefully you will fix that problem. And I said, Scott is my star today. So, I nearly forgot. I need to turn my YouTube on. Because my YouTube is very important to me. I've had a week without content, which is rather weird. It's so strange not to be here every day like I normally am. But a break is good for you mentally, I think. You know those people who take social media break. Scott,
yeah. So I'm on a social media break. I have stopped using Facebook for probably at least the last 90 days.
Really?
Yeah, since my mother passed, I've had a lot of busy work and a lot of things that I've had to do to take care of her passing. And I don't have time for jokes and memes. I am on a social media blackout right now currently. So
totally understand it. Condolences. I said, you hadn't told me that your mother passed. So.
Yeah, she's a co-founder of this business. She was also a certified psychometric expert. So it was amazing to work with her. But we do recognize that stepping away from social media, and that includes LinkedIn, because you just took a week off LinkedIn. But taking a break, it lets you reset. It resets your batteries, and it does a lot of great things that you can't do it any other way but to take a break. So
no, I say condolences. Please, I know the hard work you were doing. So when supporting your mom. So
thank you. Appreciate that. It was awesome.
Look, I said, to be fair, I'm struggling to get back into speed, up to speed. I said, I'm feeling well, but I'm trying. I need to get back up to speed. So I've got 2 events today. This is the first of the school. So I'm just glad to at least be here, and you're here as well.
Absolutely.
I will say this. I'm sure no one here knows. I've said it before. It's not new. It's not a secret. You see, I am a psychologist by education. I'm a business psychologist. I ran away from counseling and clinical psychology once I learned that I had to be counseled myself by a counselor. I was like, I'm off. Catch me if you can. You can't catch me, so you can't. So I'm not going to talk to anyone about my issues. So, but the thing I walked away from my degree and my master's with was psychometric testing. I am level A and level B qualified. Most people don't know what that is. Level A is aptitude and ability tests, and level B is personality testing. And my first business in 2001, I think, was a psychometric testing business.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I set it up, and the idea was to support businesses in doing recruitment. So that in those days, what was that, 26 years ago, 25 years ago?
Wow.
So you set up a business and then you put it into something called the Yellow Pages. Have you got something similar? In that big book of phone numbers. In our country, there were huge things. Everyone's phone number was in there.
Yeah, we used to have yellow pages, but now I think we have white pages that are smaller, and everyone uses the internet for everything else now.
Yeah. So I can't say anyone found me in the Yellow Pages. And then suddenly the internet came in. So, and that became my first real job professionally. So I guess they tried to move me to their online platform. Remember in those days they were quite popular. Those like Yellow Pages, Yale, those sort of things were they were popular because they told us if you sign up with them, then you can appear on Google's first page, high up, #1 the best of times. It didn't work because it was bogus. So I left those, and then psychometrics fell off my radar. It's interesting to be back here with you, my friend. Interesting to talk about psychometrics with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for completing your Disc Plus just a couple of weeks ago, as it helps me understand you a lot better. So I appreciate that.
It helps me understand me. That's the interesting thing, right? Dr. Yvonne, how are you doing?
Hi, Annie. How are you?
I'm all right. I know you'll say, Annie, where are you? When I'm here. I was away for a week, but I'm back.
I'm
Here.
I'm sorry. I just saw this. I'm coming out of a meeting, so I want to listen to what you're saying, and then I can hopefully add my little 2 cents in.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
joining us. Yeah, no, please, no. So you can start on mute when you're ready. Just unmute or flash your mic. All those things.
Okay.
Excellent. You are going to meet Dr. Yvonne a lot more often. I'm going to start doing our events soon. Alexis, how are you doing? Alexis, you're still on mute.
Yes, yes. Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. And today I was real busy. I thought I was going to miss this because I had a couple client meetings, but right on time. So it's all working out.
It's meant to be. It's meant to be. So thank you for joining us. Okay,
you're
so
welcome.
let's get this show started, properly. So, Scott, please paint a picture. Oh no, StreamYard's having problems swapping. How odd is that? So normally I'm moving in the middle, Scott. StreamYard says we're currently experiencing issues with the swapping of streams. This feature has been temporarily disabled. We apologize for the inconvenience. Thanks. What's that? I'll do it the other way. Go on, Scott. The mic is yours. Tell us all about it.
Oh yeah, thank you. So there is a comment here from Alexis James, just says that I'm familiar with the term psychometrics, but I would like to learn more. And a lot of people, I typically shy away from the term psychometrics because people think like, Michael Myers from Halloween, like a psycho. But psychometrics just means mental measurements, and we use them to make it easy. So for everyone that's attending this meeting, this session, this video replay here on LinkedIn and YouTube, StreamYard, however it goes, there is a link in the comments for a Disc Plus. The reason that I would ask you to do that is I wouldn't have the ability to help my clients get to where they're going unless I understood them well. There's 2 ways to do that. I can interview them and they can tell me what they think, and then I can interpret that. And if I could account for my own bias, I can come up with their bias and I can get pretty good answers, except that I don't have any proof. The second way that I could better understand and help is to assess them. If I assess their behavior, with the DISC tool and then assess what drives their behavior with the values index, it gives me a how people do things and a why people do things. And most importantly, like for job seekers that are wanting to brand themselves, we need to know what our style is. How does our behavior contribute to the value that we add and bring? Like, oh, I'm an executive leader, but I'm very indecisive and I can't make a decision. Or maybe you could prove that, maybe it's not about making decisions. Maybe it's about being careful. So DISC is really the afterthought of where behavioral science started with values index and why do people do things. That's circa 1908, and that's where it all began. And then about 15 years later, in the 1920s, we came up with a process called DISC. And it's all about how behavior goes through making decisions, interacting with others, pacing your environment, and then procedures, rules, and standards. Some people are very careful and they struggle to make decisions. Some people are very decisive and they might struggle to be careful because they trust their instincts, maybe too much. So for me, when I'm working with clients on different projects, sometimes it's executive coaching, sometimes it's team building, sometimes it's mentoring a group of employees, sometimes it's hiring projects where the company has to get the right hire the first time. And, sometimes with individuals, it's about how to be that right hire the first time. By right hire, I mean, I have a recent client. His hiring project was just about dealing with an adversity, a government layoff. There was a budget cut due to the activities of an entity called Doge. And we started working together. He did the assessments. He answered all the questions that I had. And then he had his first interview in 5 days. And then after the Easter weekend, he had received an interview. So he went from application to offer in 7 days. And the way that he was able to do that is we help the decision makers, the hiring managers, and ultimately myself and you understand how do you behave? What are the key strengths? What's the ideal job climate? What motivates you? What passions fuel you for the long days, 10, 11, 12 hours? I've been working 12 to 16-hour days here lately, just trying to get caught up. And some of my coworkers are also working startups, and they're on 16-hour days. But it doesn't burn us out as much because we're doing what we're passionate about. That's what we usually want to uncover. So if you're in this group and if you're in this audience, you can find me in the comments. You can find an instrument that will answer all these questions about you. It will take you about 10 minutes and it will give us 54 pages all about you. That would be your how and why. Now, in terms of completing the golden circle for yourself, if I was going to help with a project or if I was going to start by understanding you first, I would need one other tool, and that would be the attribute index. That's a Nobel Prize nominated tool from 1972. And it shows us in what order you think and what skills you probably flex the best, right? So this original interview premise was about how do you ace an interview? Going into the interview, they might ask you, what are your strengths? Well, we would want to just turn to page 4 and show them, these are the strengths that were assessed 2 days ago when I did this assessment. And then they go, okay, great, that's fantastic. Can I have a copy of that? And you give them their copy, right? And then maybe they want to know what your weaknesses are, right? You can smile and you can look at your minimizers on page 4, outside world, attribute index, right? We can look at maybe what you could do better or your opportunities to improve. And you can give actual information about that. And for me, the biggest way that we create interview snipers, and that's what we call them because they sometimes get the very first job that they apply for. It just means that they don't have to go into the interview and say, I think that I would be a good fit because, or I feel I could do this job well because they can actually point to proof, right? Maybe they've developed their star stories into their resume, into their work history. So in the interview, if they hit with star stories, that's already done. All you've got to do is find the one that fits and give them the answer and show it to them. But the other part of the interview is going to be behavioral based questions about you, how you fit into the team, and why. What's your why? What type of motivations do you have? So we usually want to align passions with your purpose, and then you know easily when you're on mission and off, and that increases what we would call agency. Agency is where you know where you're in and where you know where you're out. So you can avoid or delegate the things that you don't even want to be good at, and you can do what your strengths are, what you should be doing, and what your genius is. We actually use a genius process. It's a scientific study that was done years ago. 32 different countries, more than 20 million participants went into deciding what is genius and how do we account for it. So we do get that out of the attribute index, but the reason I can't give you the attribute index is because this meeting is made up of managers, leaders, right? Executive leaders. Maybe there's some sales professionals here. Maybe there's some coaches here that specialize in emotional intelligence. And if that were the case, I would want to select anyone from 30 different instruments to make sure that we got the right version of the attribute index for you. The attribute index comes out to be about 30 pages. It takes 5 minutes. And it is my favorite tool. It is the best just because it is scientifically validated. It is highly accurate. And the accuracy score for reliability is well known. It's easy to see where it's at so that we know that everything fits like a glove. The only time we would back away is if the validity score was less than 75%. And that just means if the accuracy isn't 75% or higher, if you don't say what you mean or mean what you say more than 75% of the time, then the results probably aren't going to be good or useful. So we do use DISC index for behavior, values index for motivations and drivers. And then we use a different tool called the attribute index just to understand what your genius is and in what order do you think. From a job seeker's perspective, this is everything that you would need to interview well, right? So you might hyperlink the results into your resume. You might include them. You might share that with the decision makers or the hiring managers so that they know, oh, hey, Scott provided proof of being a good fit based on his passions and his behavioral style. This looks like a good fit. Let's look at his genius, right? And then they can look at a list of skills and talents and see easily, is this a good fit? So I would invite you, please visit the comments section, take a DISC Plus. If you've never used these tools, I didn't know they existed when I found them. But I'm happy to share your results with you. No pitch, no sell, just, hey, here you go. Here's your how and why. And it should be very insightful and impactful for you, especially if you're going into an interview. It should give you 2/3 of the answers.
Superb. Look, let me work on some people, and then I'll come back to you, Scott. And so when I was younger, the issue was the company, the hiring people were the ones who administered the tests or the measures that we use, like the psychometric measures that they want to use. Well, it looks like that's changing now. So you're saying let's be more proactive. Let's know who we are before we go into that interview situation.
Absolutely.
So one, it saves costs. So many companies don't use psychometrics because they don't want to pay the costs. Whereas I say you're saving them costs, you're saving them time, and giving them accurate information that we know that we can stand behind as well. Right? Let me work with some of my friends first, then we'll come back to you, my friend. Cyrus, welcome. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Cyrus. our podcast guy, Dr. Lisa. So I'm so glad you're here. But stop swearing. I can hear you swearing from here. Thank you so much for joining us. Our menopause dietitian expert. Glad you're here as always. Mr. Z. Mr. Z says hello, Scott. So Marcus, thank you for your kind words. Afternoon, everyone, and prayer condolences to you and your family, Scott. Thank you so much for your kind words. He says the same. Linda, thank you for joining us. Linda says the same as well. I appreciate it because I miss your kindness, everyone. I really have. Yeah, so Michael, so glad you're here. Michael's speaking Swahili at you, Scott. Rosanna, thank you for joining us. Sean, so glad you're here as well. Sean is our super coach. You mentioned there was something earlier, Scott. You said something about emotional intelligence is an important thing. I think every coach has to work on their client's emotional intelligence because that's where the success lies. Really, those who master emotional intelligence tend to be better placed, more predisposed to actually do the right thing rather than letting their fears and their emotions cripple them. It's what destroys most of us, to be fair, right?
Well, it's hard to be effective if your relationships suffer. So that emotional intelligence, it lets you meet people where they're at.
Yeah, many people are destroyed by their emotions and emotional intelligence lack of maybe just not being confident in who they are.
Well, post COVID-19, that the pandemic changed people. So since that 5 years or so since that happened, people have been on the move. And, our DISC behavior will change when our environment does. So, I've measured people 1 year to the next. And when they get into a new role, their expectations of them change. The role that they play changes. And the team also changes. So their behavior adapts and it looks differently. The values index usually stays the same because we learned what was important when we were young. And then, of course, the attribute index also changes a year later. But like I said, we would normally want to assess someone yearly just to check our steering. Like you said, if you're going to develop emotional intelligence based on this report and the coaching that goes with it, let's look at it on the other side and make sure that we got what we wanted out of it.
Yeah. So Omar, welcome. Our Zoom party creating a host. That's a game show, in case you're wondering what Zoom party is. We connect with him and trying to go on his show and win some prizes. I didn't win. I barely got some questions right. No, it was fun. That's important. Look, my friends, if you're here, drop us a comment. You got any questions? You got any insights? Then by all means, put it in the comments. Of course, you're welcome to come on in the studio. The link is on the comments page. If you want to send the link directly to your DMs, let me know. I will send the link to you. So Scott, Alexis and Dr. Yvonne, if you got any questions, any comments about psychometrics, I know Scott doesn't call them psychometrics. That's what they are really. They are tested measures, and that's not mentioned. Go on, Alexis.
I'm just interested in learning how it works along with behavioral, how it crosses over, because you mentioned the behavioral angle. So I'm just listening and learning and trying to formulate some good questions.
Okay, Alexis. So what I would say normally with a statement like that is that knowledge is not powerful until we apply it, right? So usually people have certain goals they're working on. Maybe they, want to update their LinkedIn profile. Maybe they want to get promoted. Maybe they want to get a new job entirely. What I would say is if you complete the DISC Plus, there's a link for a free instrument in the comments here. If you complete that, it's easy to meet me for coffee. And I'm drinking a soda right now, my apologies, but it's easy to meet me for coffee, talk about the results and then how you would apply them. I would say that's usually the most powerful thing that we do in our projects, because, applying what you learn means, that you can take action with it, you can do something with it. Knowing in itself doesn't help. Like, if you were looking for a job, if you were a job seeker, maybe you want to get this information into the hands of, the right person, that's, the hiring manager, the decision maker, someone that could do something with, knowing that you'd be a good fit.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for that clarification. That makes
Yeah,
sense. Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. It would be a pleasure to introduce you.
You're welcome. Take care.
I do think that we lost Annie for just a minute. I think he had to step away and take care of something. So, yeah, let me look here real quick. I should be able to tell if we have any new samples. And I did try to send information that was. It looks like there's a couple in process now. All the other ones were sent before the meeting. So, okay. But yeah, the majority of the clients that I meet, they benefit from having real information. And that's kind of where, Annie was talking about when he started this. It might not have been as easy to get information in front of someone or to apply it, because the internet wasn't as expanded or as pervasive. But now we can easily work in 7 different time zones and touch thousands, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people in a day. We can easily share the results and we can take action. It's a lot easier than it was today versus when Annie had started this, back in the day. I believe he said 26 years ago. Oh, you're on mute.
Nice.
Sorry.
I'm still young. Michael, I'm gonna send you the link to join the studio in your DM as we speak. Now, Scott, look, it's all right. I can see you're joining the meeting, but you haven't, you're not enabling your camera or your microphone. It's all right. I can't join a video meeting. I'm at an event. You're looking at me at an event. How can I do a Zoom meeting right now? No can do. Anyway, Scott, I suppose when we know that psychometric tests or psychometric measures are an accurate measure of who we are, because who we are deep down doesn't change, does it? We are fixed.
Yeah, so we typically regard this as we are perfect, like just the way that we are created, right? And then right now, the snapshot in time, it might look like this. So this is not a personality test, and I don't even use the word test because that implies there's a right and a wrong answer. I normally want to stick to an assessment because it's about what's the best version, of the truth for you. And how we'll know it's good is if it fits accurately, right? If it has distinction, like, so our version of Disc Plus, you'll be able to see natural and adaptive styles, meaning we'll understand who you are subconsciously when no one's watching you, and also consciously while you know that you're being observed, because our behavior changes. One is who we want to be, the other is who we think we should be when we know that people are watching. And then with the attribute index, you would know it would be a good sample if it has a validity score. Personality tests, they just shoot information over to you based on the buttons that you hit. It doesn't matter if you meant what you said or said what you meant. It's just going to give you a result. In these assessments, if you contradict yourself, it will show that there's a conflict here, which most people have a conflict, to be honest. Sometimes it's about a role that they play. Sometimes it's about where they see themselves in 18 to 24 months. Sometimes it might even be about their own self-esteem or self-belief. But you will know it's a good sample if it's scientifically validated and if the accuracy score is at 75% or higher. if you meet that requirement, you meet the legal requirement for hiring in North America.
Superb. I think that they're super useful measures. They're super useful tools to have. I think, so why we don't use them more, I don't understand. So even as an employer who keeps getting my selections, my choices skew with. I won't say wrong, I say skew with. They don't work, and not many of them survive long enough to see the light of day. So some survive a year or two. Some people don't survive a week with me. You see, this brings me back to my results, Scott, on the disc on the disc measure, right? I read it and I thought, okay, most of it is it's pretty much who I am. For some parts, I was like, I think the tool had me down as way too nice, way too giving, and not what's the word? Essentially, it sounded like I was laissez-faire in some things. I don't like to be assertive. I think is what it kept saying to me. That's wrong. So wrong. I'm ignorant when I choose to be ignorant. I'm assertive when I know it's my zone. Right.
Well, looking at your results, Annie, your behavior is right in the middle. And that's good because it doesn't denote that you're an extremist. And by an extremist, I mean you're not highly decisive, you're not highly careful, you're not low either. You're right in the middle. But the only thing that's really high for you is the interaction, the I in the disc. So you're extroverted, and I think that's why you're comfortable coming on shows like this and having guests like myself and talking. But this is a good profile because, like I said, it shows that there isn't, a lot of extremism except for maybe extroversion. And then when I look at your values, the only demotivator that you have is about the aesthetics, meaning that as long as it's effective enough, it doesn't have to be pretty, right? You have a bottom line orientation for high economic ROI. Right, you do come back as high at 59, and if I could share my screen, I could show that. But yeah, your values and passions, I mean, they're clearly on display in your work. Did you get a chance to deep dive some of the other page numbers, like in the teens, to look at that?
Yeah. I read the report from back to front.
Okay.
So, I was impressed overall. I guess knowing me, on some things, I am. Do you remember our conversation yesterday, Scott? About inviting. I said to you, right, Scott, this is how it's going to be. It's this or this. There's no other way. Right. So now, when I know what I need, what I want, I'm super aggressive about getting it. Other people normally think I'm total idiot. They think I'm too aggressive. So I guess the point I make is on paper, yes, I come across as super nice, but as long as the thing's not going to kill me, I'm all right. And if I do events with my attitude of be open to everything, be attached to nothing. That's my simple principle, right? That's the only way I can do events. But God help anyone who crosses my path in something I care about. Then they find that I'm a total idiot. I'm just, I sound almost angry. They're like, Annie, what happens to nice Annie? I'm like, no, it's the same one. I just know what I want. And if you don't do what I want, something's we're not gonna get very far. So no, it's a good thing. I guess I love it. I think the test was also very, it was multiple choice. So it's not an exam in that sense. It's which are you most like, which are you least like, and what's the ones in the middle, right? So
yeah, and I think what you're talking about is persuasion. I don't have an attribute index on you. If I did, I could answer that a lot more clearly. But I think you're talking about persuading individuals and getting them to take action. And we call that just creating buy-in. So you might call that aggression towards working towards goals. For me, I see getting people to take action. Like
That's exactly
you.
it.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
please carry. So no, that's exactly it. It is, I'm I'm obsessed with, don't just say do, take action. That's the reason I do these events. I want people to come to hear us, listen to us, and do something. Don't just come and listen and do nothing. And those who take action are my best friends. Those who don't take action, I tend to slowly ease backwards. They might not notice, but that's what I'm doing, really.
Right on.
Odelia, I'm not sure if I mentioned. I hope I did. And I said, welcome, welcome, Odelia. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, Michael. I do see you as well. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well. I'm glad that you're up and about again. Um, how do you do, Scott Henderson? How you doing? Have we met before?
I do
I
not
think.
believe I know you. I apologize. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, okay. It's nice to meet you then. Um, your name just sounds familiar. That's it's probably a common name, but I'm not so sure. I'm not too conversant in that with American names. Um, I've got a question for you, and this is regarding the what do you call it? Typo screening, something like that? Yeah. Do you have enough statistics to show that the typo screen is matching employees and employers, resulting in a lower turnover? And if you do, what are the margins?
Yeah, so that's a great question about the margins and about turnover. So I would say three-fourths or 75% of Fortune 500 companies use Disc Plus either for team building, right? Leadership development. Maybe they use it to coach their managers, their emerging leaders, or even their executives. The reason that they use these types of instruments for hiring is the cost of a bad hire is usually $30,000 to $40,000 to fix. And by that I mean if you hire the wrong person, you pay them a signing bonus, you start training them, right? And then you have like 6 weeks of a discovery period, and then you find out maybe 6 weeks later this individual is not cutting it, it's not going to work out, we need to replace it, replace this solution, this person. To hire another person, you got to come up with another bonus, another training window, right? Another benefits package. You've got a lot of costs associated with separating with the one that didn't work and bringing on and finding and bringing the new person on that will fit. Now, the results for retention they're north of 82% for companies that use these tools for team building. By that, I mean their team members don't jump because they feel they are valued, they feel heard, they feel understood. The company invested in their training. Maybe they invested in the event that we did this in. They are typically more bought into the company mission because they've seen not just their part of the solution, but who the other counterparts on the team are, how they behave, and what they bring. So it's not only about just knowing yourself, it's also about knowing the team, right, that you work with. Maybe you know your manager, well too. It just eases communication. Um, but in terms of statistics for keeping people on board, right, it's upwards of 80% easily. Now, in terms of hiring solutions and finding the right person the first time, the statistics are more like 94 to 97% accurate, meaning that all of those hiring solutions stayed in place for a long time. There are outliers. Sometimes there are budgets that are cut, reduction in force. There might have been a federal program that was cut. There are things that come up and can affect the statistics. But usually, by demystifying the human condition, we know who people are, how they fit in, where they add the most value, and we know that they're a good fit for all these reasons. So that was a very good question. I would encourage you, if you had said that you're not as familiar with American names, there
Mm-hmm.
is an assessment link in the comments for this event. If you were to take it, please take it in your native tongue. It is
Okay.
available in probably 16 different languages. The reason that I say that is your mind thinks in the language that you used growing up. And I wouldn't want you to just use English because it says English. Please click on the language that fits you the best, okay?
Okay. Does it include Ebonics?
It does not.
Ah, okay.
And it only doesn't include that information because these assessments, um, they've been applied science for probably about 240 years. While they've been applied from a scientific standpoint, they're not usually modernized with cultural information like that. So my apologies.
The assessments, are they typically free or is this something that you have to pay for?
They are typically not free. I pay for them. I pay for them for everyone that I work with because it's the best way to get the best results. But by coming to this event, I'm happy to cover a very complimentary Disc Plus for you, that is available at zero cost to you.
Okay. And you said that's in the comment, we just need to click in the comments field, or after this session, we just need to go there and and sign in and take a quick test. And how long does it run for, typically?
Well, so you'll set the pace, you'll complete it at your own pace. There's two indexes there, disk and values. Each one takes about 5 minutes. So you're looking
Mm-hmm.
about 10 minutes. And then, like I said, once I see that come in, I'll email you the results and some support information that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just easy to ask me any questions if you need to later.
Okay. Does the type of screen also evaluate, like technical skills, properties such as that? Do they have an ability to do that? Like, for instance, a gentleman would come in and then, yes, you have several positions open in your company, but you're not sure where this person is going to fit, uh, technical wise. So you want that ability to be able to put him, in the place where you think he'll best fit. Is type of screen capable of doing that? Is there an AI aspect of it that allows it to do that? I'm just wondering whether, the technology has advanced enough to be able to be that good.
Okay, so as of the time of this recording, these assessments do not use artificial intelligence. There is no AI. It does show a predisposition for using machines and technology and having a knack for that. But we would actually want to use a more specific indicator. If we wanted to know more about the technology and more about that person, we would have to use a different instrument, but they are available.
Oh, okay. Under different names, in other words, or under different.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
they're
I got
different
it.
measures. They're different brands. They're different. There's
It's like a
hundreds,
shoebox.
thousands of psychometric measures out there. So
Okay.
it's about choosing the right one for the right purpose, right? This does something.
All right.
So there's many others. So like I said, there's aptitude tests, aptitude measures, there's ability measures, personality measures, and many other things in between, right?
Okay.
Even interest, and there's interest measures as well.
That's
So
interesting.
you need someone like Scott to help you unpick which one is the right one that I should look at
Oh yeah,
for what
I'll
for the
definitely
relevant
communicate with him
financial.
and find out more. One more
Yeah.
question. Are there any cons to the type of screen that you may be aware of?
In terms of cons or negatives, The only negative that I could come up with is that there is confidential information that we come up with. And by that, I just mean if I'm working with a job seeker and we're presenting information to the company about who's the best fit and why, I will not share any of the internal information from the attribute index. And by that, I mean no one gets to understand what your self esteem or self belief looks like. And the reason that I say that is it's either going to be high, it's going to be in the middle, or it's going to be low. But if you use that to judge someone as potentially being a good fit, you might be discriminating against them based on how they feel about themselves. So, in my line of work, that's information that we protect that no one has access to except for myself and the person that took the assessment. Okay, so, and by that I just mean, the companies that we would contract with, they would just have the understanding that, there's certain information that they can't use. And that's the only bad thing that I would say is that, these instruments are sensitive enough that if you just experienced a layoff, you might have taken a hit to your self-esteem and self-belief because the rug that you were standing on was just yanked and pulled out from underneath you. So in our approach, we do keep that confidential, but it would be the only concern that I would have. So that was another great question. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you.
Certainly enlightened here, and hopefully I'll be getting a phone call from you pretty soon. Thank you very much.
Sounds awesome. Thank you.
No, look, go and do that. Go and do this kind of analysis, this screening that's in the comments. It's free. Never going to get it free again, right? It's free. And so when Michael mentions, I guess, drawbacks and cons of these measures, I suppose as long as we know we're honest, then I don't think many things. I think we call this event "Knowing Me, Knowing You" deliberately, because as long as you actually do want to know about yourself, your potential employer said they want to know about you, and as Scott said, you can also know about them. So it is the knowing me, knowing you. If you approach these measures with a genuine interest to know, then I don't think there's many things that can go wrong. It's on some other measures, on some ability tests, for example. Ability tests measure what you can do and your potential, right? I guess maybe even your achievements. It's about your, what skills you have, the abilities you have, right? I'm saying that can you lie to them? You could. Would it make sense? Maybe if you really want the job, maybe, but you get found out. So then again, so one thing that Scott and I know is that there are validity questions, accuracy questions in the measures. So there's some questions in there that deliberately they're put in there to see whether you're telling the truth or not.
They're calibration. It's all about calibration.
And those will pick very quickly whether you are being disingenuous or whether you're not. If you're being honest, then I'm not going to give you any tricks. And I know how it works, right? There's some things that you can't be 10 out of 10 on. But if you say you are, then it knows you're lying straight away. There's some things that you can't be zero on. Are you know what I'm saying? So, but you can't work out what those questions are. And they say, even we don't know half the time, but the machine that scores your results will know whether you've been honest or whether you've been trying to fool the whole system. It's a good thing. So, Scott, here's my question for you. So, given that these measures look at who we are deep down, Right. What's our chances of improving in different areas? Even if we use a disc, for example, so can we improve our D or an I?
Oh, yeah. So knowing is half the battle, right? That's what they said in a cartoon that I used to watch as a kid. It was called G.I. Joe. They said knowing is half the battle. Now, I have case studies, I have benchmarks, I have clients that they were a certain way when we met them. And then a year later, like I'm thinking of Amber specifically, she had a problem with her self-esteem and she had a problem with her self-direction. And when we met, both of those factors added up to a whopping score of 0.2. And then a year later, just because she knew herself, she knew her profile, and she had answered questions while working with me, her cumulative score, like her self-esteem, self-belief, went from 0.0 to 7.9. So she went from the bottom to right up near the top. And her self-direction was 0.2. And it jumped all the way up to, I believe, 6.4 plus. So, yes, the answer is we do change. We can modify our behavior. As a psychologist, you already know that our behavior changes when we know that we're being watched. So when you're watching yourself, your behavior will also change because you can make what we would call a conscious effort to be more mindful or be more present in where we're at, what we're doing, and the results that we want. So I will send that to you, Annie. I'll send that to you. And, maybe that would be a good file to share again on LinkedIn and maybe feature it in my featured section. It just shows that people do change, but usually they have to know where they're at before they can find true north. So great question. I'll give you an example when we get out of this meeting. So
I'm looking at the comments. I can see your link. There's a long description, right? Well, it's a YouTube channel. Is that the one with the link to this screen?
oh yeah, so yeah, there is an overview YouTube video in the comments. That's just talking about the 3 tools that we use the most.
Okay.
And that's just an introduction, just so people understand what are we talking about. And then the other comment is a link for the Disc Plus.
So that's the one I'm looking for. I can't see that one.
Okay, let me grab it. I will put it in our chat in here so you can see it in our internal chat window.
Yeah, you post it in the comments here as well. For those who want to copy and paste, it certainly can be done. Yeah.
Okay. Oh geez. Okay, yeah, sorry. I can't go to the event without hearing myself talk now. So
well, meet the event page. that's where we do it. So meet. So Alexis, I see you have to go. Thank you for joining us. Of course, I hope you complete the disc to get a good profile of who you are. It's a good thing. So I've done it, and I'm certainly wiser for knowing how any is. Any's condition is what I call it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Scott, so you want to present something? You said, right? So can you see the present button, a big box at the bottom of your screen?
Yeah.
Use that, and then you can present all the scores or what you're going to show us.
Oh, okay.
I see you,
Okay.
Sarah. Welcome, Sarah.
Yeah, so thank you. Let me grab this file of Amber,
Yeah,
and then I will share that. I apologize for not being versed on these tools. That is totally my fault.
it's fine. It's fine. It's your first time doing this event from a hot seat, so it's all good.
Okay, so I am going to, let's see, it says I have no slides. I am going to share a screen.
See how accurate the disc screen was about Annie? How nice he is.
It is. At best of times, I say I'm nice, I'm lovely, until you get into my like the things that really matter to me, and then I go all crazy. All right, Scott. So here goes. So I can add this to stage. So there you go.
Okay, so yeah, I did open that file, but I did not find it. My apologies. What I do have on screen are your values.
Yeah,
Right?
go for it. Go for it. So I don't mind the word knowing about me
Yeah,
because
so
I know about me, right?
yeah, so in terms of understanding any, right, we can see here he's right in the middle,
Mhm.
right? And if we just jump to page 8, we can see what is this about? It's about problems, it's about people, it's about pacing your environment, and it's about procedures, rules, standards, right? So we can see that any is right here into being maybe competitive, responsible, inquisitive, right? We see that in terms of his um, gregariousness, he's right up here at the top. He's probably more what I would call inspiring, right? At 81, right? It's easy to see that he's right up here, inspiring, enthusiastic. Okay. Now, I do wish that I could share the file related to that question, but I'm not seeing that to share. Um, in terms of information that I would like to know about you, right? So it says excellent empathetic listening style, a model for others to observe and follow, right? We can see your name right there. We know this is you, and I just refuse to mischaracterize you because I said that you were talkative, but it also shows that you're highly, active in listening. And that's probably a very important thing to make sure that your communication is on point and that you take advantage of opportunities to say the right thing the first time, right? When you're meeting people, it says you're very people oriented. You're able to talk in small or large groups on the internet in front of video, right? It shows that you bring a positive sense of humor. It shows that you build positive relationships with both internal external stakeholders. It says that you have a high sincerity factor when it comes to the team climate, and that you have a lot of optimism that helps you work towards your goals. Now, you describe that as being aggressively ambitious. I would say you're highly optimistic, and that you're on the persuasive side of things based on how you behave. Right now, we usually want to start with why, right? We usually want to know, why does anyone do anything? You can see you would very much like to do it your way. Highly individualistic. I'm assuming that's part of why you're self-employed and you've been running your own business for so long, right? I know that I share this in common with you, right? You're also very curious and into learning, right? You have a high drive for economic ROI. It shows what normal is. You're just barely on the high side, right? But it shows that you only have one demotivator, and that is aesthetics, right? If I wanted to know what is this about, right, we would say form, harmony, beauty, balance. those types of things, they don't matter as much to any. That's why he's here today, despite not feeling super well. Um, but he is motivated by practical results, ROI, return on investment. He is motivated to be independent and unique. He does have, let's see, I believe, let's see what his leadership score looks like. Right. So he does have a high political drive. So that means control, power, and influence. That's something that he's comfortable with. Altruism drive, helping others, serving, giving. That is an average score for him. Um, Structure, order, routine. It looks like that's high for him as well. And so is knowledge and learning. Right. So if I go back here to page 3, we can see average, average, and then high and high. In terms of what they mean, each one of them is coded on their page. And then as we dig into the report, it will give you an introduction on page 6, and it will tell you, what does this report contain? So I have been using this for more than 10 years now. So when my clients ask me questions, I go to the answers on the right page based on what they asked of me. So unfortunately, I am not seeing the other file that I wanted to share about Amber, but we'll see if we can find it here. Now, in terms of ideal job climate, right? That might be something that we would want to know. We might need to have that information available to us. So, and I'm not seeing where any is at. I think he stepped away for just a moment. But in terms of knowing yourself, there was a question about how do you use it to get better. There's ideas and areas for continual improvement. There's information for your training and learning style. The next thing we would look at is about your communication style for others to be successful, and then what you should do, like what you should avoid with this person, and then let's see, that would be page 17. Ideas for staying more motivated. If you needed to understand, how to be more engaged or stick with it, we would have that information. Strength-based insights is my favorite page for everyone. That's usually how I introduce someone. Oh, and he's back. I'm going to see if I can try to present that slides and PDFs. Let's see, from my computer. Upload a file. Oh, if it's going to let me upload, then I can do that. Just 1 second. That was such an amazing question about, how do we know that people change? So this PDF is uploading right now, Annie. It says it's processing, but we should be able to show.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this is a very powerful example for me because this is user created. I did not make this. Amber made this as she was going into a yearly review. She was able to show that in the last year, in the last 51 weeks, when we met her, she had a self-esteem, self-belief score that was, my apologies, it was 0.0 minus. So when we apply the cube key, this is a tool called the attribute index. We can see that when we met her, she was possibly depressive. She had no real sense of self-worth. She self-deprecated, which meant she told jokes where she was the punchline. When we met, I did not know that her score was this. It just came in as a 4. I have a safety factor of 4 just so that you'll never see a low score like this when we're meeting. Okay. But then after a year, right? So February of 2023, when we assessed her again, she had this score where I think she's at 7.9 on the minus side, and it shows uh, inner strength, motivated to improve, good ego, but feels unfinished on her journey, right? And that this ties to the question of how do you know that it's accurate too? Well, when my clients meet with me and they review the information, they know it's accurate because it's spot on. It sounds like them. These might even be the answers that they were looking for. Now, self direction, when I met her February of 2022, she had a zero point 0.2 minus bias. So that meant that she had a situational code of ethics. She wasn't sure that she should be doing what she was at. She had a lack of motivation to see where the future would land. She was nearsighted. She was reluctant or fearful to know where the future landed for her. So fast forward to February of 2023, and she changed. What does that say? 5.7 plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I coded that for her with the cube key, it said that she was stubborn, self assured, resilient, self confident, can weather many storms, um, clear sense of direction, right? Is that what does that say? Strong self identity with future vision of self. So, in terms of what does this do for you, I worked with her on a hiring project, and we took her to where she didn't believe in herself at all to where she was a very different person 1 year later.
So
That's one of my favorite examples.
quick question, Scott. What's the work you do with people in that year that you mentioned? I mean, I'm sure is it always a year? It's going to be shorter, or is it are there variations?
Yeah,
And how long?
so usually when we work with someone, there's usually coaching involved, and it comes just from having conversations that are clued in and that they are understood. The reason that we measure a year later, not all coaching engagements are a year long. Some of them are, but in this instance, this was just generated through um, probably 8 weeks of coaching. She found a new job and she moved to the new job, and it was within the same company. It was a promotion for her, but she used this information that she provided. Like I said, she made this, and she used it to show how she had changed in just the 1 year. Now, the reason that we measure yearly is because that's usually the best indicator to find out if something changed. At 6 months, you might be in the middle of changing and it would still show, but it would be less pronounced and maybe less drastic. So, great question. Any, I can't see you. I'm sorry if I lost you.
No. I'm still here. I'm taking it all in. I suppose knowing that we can change, that we can be more like who we want to be, who we may need to be. That's always a good thing. That's my friend Sean, in the audience. He's a super coach, but he talks about changing who you are fundamentally, like who you really are. I think that's where most of our success comes from. Without this sort of measures, I guess we don't know what to address necessarily. We don't know which characteristics to actually want to focus on. So I think it's super useful to at least have a guide. Going back to Michael's point earlier, I think these sort of screenings, these sort of measures, they are benchmarks in different industries. So I'm sure you know, Scott, where someone needs to be to work in any particular sector, whether it's engineering, whether it's administration, whether it's management, leadership, and so on and so forth. That's one of the perks of these ventures, right?
Yep.
That's how companies use them. So, but for us, I think the important thing is to know that we can change our scores, we can change our strengths, our styles, and our drivers, as you say, Zara, to fit what we want to be and where we want to go. Yeah, interesting. Please carry on, Scott.
Yeah, I love this example because she was in the driver's seat of understanding herself. Obviously, she's managing her life, she's living her life. But the biggest thing that we were able to do to help her was understand exactly where she was at so that we could meet her there, and then just put a plan in place to identify what do you like or love about this, and then what would you change. Some of the stuff we want to reinforce, some of it we want to develop. But as we worked with Amber, right, we worked on the different opportunities that she could find. Obviously we found some using the tools that we provided, right? But what I would say is, we all run custom software in our mind. We program it, our parents help program it, and it changes. We know that the coronavirus pandemic changed people's programming because it was a life altering event. It was, for some people, it was the scariest thing that ever happened. Um, but you don't have a user's manual for the software that your brain is running. So usually in my first attempt to meet someone or work with them, it's easy to share an assessment that helps us understand all of the details that would make up that user's manual. And for me, I have a lot of respect for coaches that are out there that coach clients willingly without knowing the answers. And by that, I mean, when you ask them specific questions and they answer your question with a question, they're not trying to frustrate you. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to guide you down the path of self discovery. For me, while I do have some patience with that, I usually would prefer to jump right into the answer, where if someone asks me a very specific question, I'm going to go to the answer in their profile so that I can give them the best answer possible, and that they can see it themselves, that they know this is true, right, and real. It's usually very impactful that way.
Excellent. So here's a question for you. Zara, I take your comments. So Zara says, AI mind scientists can't replace prayers, deep prayers and condolences for Scott and everybody else. Being kind, being empathic, you will never know who's going through what. Amen. And women. I say, right. So I think that's true, though, right? So I do believe life is based on being kind. It's based on living your life with goodness in your heart. I think good intentions always pay off in the long run. So should I take that off stage? I can take that off stage, Scott. That makes it easier for you.
Yeah. Is that okay? Is it okay to take that off?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
I think that you showed us very clearly how you can make a difference.
It was a great question. You guys set me up perfectly for that. Thank you.
I suppose my next question for you is: how do you work with companies? I imagine individuals can do this screening, but employers tend to want to do them now. Would they can benefit from using them on the potential new recruits and also their existing staff, right?
Yeah, so for working with individuals, obviously we want to just understand their needs. So usually they have a project in mind, they have a goal to attain. We'd want to understand that. We usually want to create a volume order for them. So if we created, I created a volume order for this group, and I believe that I put 3,000 tools into the Disc Plus for this group. so that I know anyone that completes this link, I can email them their results and I can thank them for attending. But if we wanted to say maybe help Global.Media hire the next set of interns or, production assistants, project managers, whatever like Global.Media would need, right? I'm using that company just as an example. We would want to create a volume order for them and a project plan that anyone that's going to be involved with the project, they would complete a disc plus, how and why, and they would also complete an attribute index that fits them well. Now, if this was a hiring solution, there would be some interpretation involved, just that you're going to get a set of information back for the people, um, how and why, and then, how and why, and then what, in two different reports. It's very important to keep in mind there's a validity score that lets you know how accurate it is. But usually, individuals like companies that are looking to hire, they'll sometimes dictate to me that these are the candidates. Maybe there's 10 of them. Maybe I'll see their resume. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will just see the job description and the assessment results. They'll want to know who's the best fit for the role based on the assessment. Back up and support your answer. So they will want a case study from me that will support one candidate over all the others based on their data. So sometimes we have conversations about that. Sometimes they just want directional recommendations. But it always includes removing the unknown. And for human beings, demystifying them or removing the unknowns from their human condition, make it as easy as possible. So,
all right, so I mean, it's a comprehensive service. Again, I know many, it's easy to take these measures and then try to figure out ourselves what we think it means, and what we think our scores mean, and I guess our profile as a whole. Well, it's always best to have someone debrief. Is what we call it in psychology. Someone to debrief you about what you're actually looking at, and what you can, what it means, and what you can work on.
Any is 1,000% correct here, and the reason that I say that is sometimes people that aren't familiar with the tools, they don't necessarily know how to interpret the results. They might try to figure out, is this good or is this bad? Right? I think even in this meeting, someone asked, well, how do these results look? Are they okay? And it's like, oh yeah, they're great because they're right in the middle. They're not extreme. But with data, the biggest key is how do you interpret it? So the interpretation is key. That's the biggest part of becoming certified to use these tools, is that you understand it well enough you can explain to people where they are at and help them build a bridge to where they are going. So for the people that are in this meeting that complete the Disc Plus, when I follow up with you, I will also share an invite for a coffee meeting. If you have questions, I can easily explain how you apply the details that are in the Disc Plus. Maybe there are questions. It's pretty easy to find me, but Annie is right just in that taking the information and interpreting it by yourself, it can be dangerous, because if you get the wrong idea in your head, it might be challenging to overcome that, and it might not be as effective if you knew what it meant compared to a sample size or a group. And by that, I just mean people are all so different. We're as different as our fingerprints. Where your example, like where Annie's data is at, it might be a little bit different than my own. I mean, I even have my own data downloaded. I can show that. I shared that 20 minutes before this meeting started, just so people to understand what kinds of things are we looking at, what will we learn. The DISC Plus probably isn't as challenging to interpret than the attribute index is, but the attribute index, it is pretty tricky. Like I said, it's a validated scientific tool. It's about 30 pages long. There's a lot of opportunity to get, an idea confused. So it's usually best to meet someone that knows and get some clarity for the confidence that you're looking for.
Indeed. Deirdre, thanks for joining us all the way in New Zealand. Good to see you all. The mission is to know thyself. It really is. Like, the more we know ourselves, the more we can learn how to be the people that we actually want to be, right? Marcus says, oh, look your screen again. Marcus says, thank you for valuable information, Annie and Scott. It's not me. Scott's the one with the information. I'm just the conduit here, doing what I do, right? I'll follow up with you, Scott, this evening. Thanks, Marcus. That made my day. I say one person at a time is where I tend to want to influence people, Scott. So when I get one person to do the right thing, then we're winning. Zara, I love your comments. It's a very fast-paced era. It is. 6,000 people were laid off of Microsoft. Senior project managers were gone. Boom, just like that. Some launched in the legal cases. Why? It says it's not AI that's replacing them. It's that lack of life, that essential skill, adaptability. You mentioned earlier, Scott. What would I be looking for in people? That I work with. I think adaptability, yes. For as you saw, I'm one for how we do things around here. I'm one for defining our way. Ultimately, that's what sets us apart from others. They do things their way. Some of them have no way of doing things. They just say they do, and then they just do. Whereas now, to know that my team is working like me, they're working in the same values, same principles, same processes at best of times. It's helpful. So please go on. That's how you're going to speak until I carried on waffling, right?
Yeah, that comment about adaptability, that 6,000 person hit to the job market and the tech sector, that hit me pretty personally. I would say since January of 2023, I have watched the news as leaders all over the place have been replaced and downsized. There was a comment in that there was a mention in that comment about those people aren't being replaced by AI, and that adaptability to change is the most important aspect of our human condition and getting to where we're going. There are instances I have worked with people that have reduced, they've had their salary reduced by like up to 50% sometimes because the company told them we're going to outsource half of your research and decision making to artificial intelligence. We're going to use AI for that. So we're going to pay you less. And, the very first time, I'll never forget, who I was working with and when that happened. But, we were able to get him to a new job. I think it took 3 weeks. And within 3 weeks, he was off and gone. He had left the company that had downsized him 50%. And he went and found a company that, would not treat him that way. The debrief was important for that client just so that he understood it, that, what the results mean and how to apply it. For the downsizing of leadership, it is unfortunate. It is something that I keep on my radar. It is something that we work actively against just to make sure that we can put people back to work and get them to where they're satisfied and they're contributing, adding value, taking care of their families. A lot of individuals have been affected in leadership over the last 2 years. A lot of great American citizens have been impacted. Project managers have been impacted by federal reduction in workforces. Just about every branch has been hit now. Um, and it's weird. It's weird to work with government in, institutions, because when you see recruiters for the FBI looking at your LinkedIn profile because they're checking on your clients, it can be, interesting, or, even scary sometimes. I just know that there's, so much opportunity out there. Um, One challenge that I would have for the individuals in this group is, what you do to add value daily, right? Even if you're still working, individuals that have a side hustle, like most of the people I know, work more than one role. One job they have as a corporate entity, the other maybe they're a musician, maybe they have property that they run Airbnb, maybe they're landlords. There's always something that we should be doing proactively to make sure that we have more than one revenue stream. I myself work on that all the time, but I'm afraid that the news that we've been getting over the last couple of years has pushed people to diversify not just their investment in time, energy, and money, but also the results and the output that they get. Like, sometimes they moonlight, they work in the evenings, they work in the afternoons, or on the weekends at different companies. um, that was a great comment, and I'm sorry I missed the name. It is gone now, but thank you for sharing that.
That's my friend Zara. I said I did great comments. It's the things that people need. This as employers, there's things that we need, and whether that's in job description or whatever else. We call them soft skills. It's what something like this measures, for example, like the soft skills rather than Michael mentioned technical skills earlier. You want the right people in the right place, and I think that this, for example, is a great tool to help people to appreciate your talents, to appreciate your personality, your qualities that you bring. Yeah, so that's why I think it's such a useful thing. But my friends, if you're here, look, do go and complete this screening that Scott's put in the comments, and he'll happily work through your results with you. So, Deirdre, that's a great way to know thyself, as you say so beautifully. Yes, know thyself. If you know thyself, then I guess you can communicate that to other people, or even just show them. Yeah, Scott's report's pretty comprehensive of what you've seen. And show them what you want to show them, and incorporate that into your CV, right? You can
Oh yeah.
into your profile. Now, Scott, so I guess final question, because our time has run out. How does your career counseling service work? How does your job support service work?
Oh yeah, so we usually start with why. We want to identify and understand what motivates the person. Obviously, we need to use the values index for that. That's included in this tool. But we want to make sure that the passions align with what the person wants to do. Now, um, there's details about where you should spend time, and then there's also things that you should probably avoid. From that, I would want to make sure that we understand any demotivators that a person has, because they can be just as important, um, to avoid creating a weakness versus sticking with something that we you know play to your strengths is what I would say. In terms of career counseling and coaching, we always want to make sure that the values align with the work and the role, but the behavioral style also has to be a good fit. Now, there is a tool that I'm trying to share just so I can show. Okay, yeah. So let's see. Let's see. Does that show? Okay, yeah, this is pulling everything directly from an upload. What you can see on screen here is just an example of a validity score. Um, this is a person's view of the outside world. It says what they mean. They mean what they said and said what they meant 88% of the time when they're talking about the outside world. And I'm having trouble zooming in on that on my screen. All right, it looks like 85 maybe is the right deal. So 85 x external or outside world, and then 88% internal world, self-esteem, role awareness, and then self-direction, where you see yourself in 18 to 24 months. We usually want to make sure that we have this information to make sure that it is a good sample. You can see 85%, it meets the legal requirement, but we want to be able to go into the details about how do you like you see here, guiding yourself, developing yourself. And then for some reason I'm having trouble with this PDF. My apologies, any. It talks about how, like you had talked about, inspiring others with persuasion. How do you serve others, right? We want to be able to understand a person, how they communicate their vision, how, and even envisioning an outcome. It starts all with understanding, right? So we usually want to measure someone to make sure that we have um, the right understanding. All right. If we don't have that information and we don't know that it's good, our ability to help may be uh, less effective. It may be at question. AI is a tool that I've only started to use. I've been reluctant to use it up until this point because on its best day, it's about 70% accurate. My legal requirement for accuracy is normally 75% or higher. So usually AI doesn't meet my requirement for accuracy, so I've shied away from it. I have started using AI just recently in the last couple weeks, but it is only because keeping up with the demand and being timely for my clients is very important. And I know it's a tool that has to be checked, just like these are the tools that we're using. So for career coaching, um, even interview prep, we're talking about known good information. The ultimate advantage comes down to when you apply for a job that the people should be able to see that you're a good fit. Maybe they see in what order you think, what you bring to the role in terms of real strengths, real skills, real talent, and maybe even what your genius is. So for me, it is a guided self discovery package that we use to make knowledge powerful, actually getting people to the interviews and to ace them because they talk about known good information. It We don't have to say things like I guess or I feel I would be a good fit, or things like I think. You won't be caught in any traps if you use personal assessments or psychometric tools because it's an advantage to understand. It's a greater advantage to make sure that decision makers and hiring managers understand also. So for those that are doing the hiring, right, you might want to get this information about someone. Maybe you want to make sure that they don't have a low empathy score. Maybe you want to make sure that they, can get along well with others. It's a lot easier to see that information versus trying to feel them out in 4 or 5 interviews.
All those interviews, I don't know how people would stay the course. Doing one interview is bad enough for me. So I never enjoyed them. But maybe it was my way of thinking when I was younger. Very, very, very useful stuff. Very useful. Look,
Thank you.
I think Scott and I are going to have a conversation about how we go forward. I think his topic is one that we need to keep. Maybe deep diving into. There's things there's parts of even inequalities people need. I think that's something that we need to dive into sometime. And then how do we work on those? Of course, a whole job search, getting the job that you want thing is also, it's also a great thing that we need to understand. Yeah, so you call it career counseling, but I think there's more that we need to know to actually make sure we find the roles that are good for us. Which may be in a company, may not be. May be going self-employed, may be doing your own thing. But even then, you need qualities to, entrepreneurial skills and a mindset thing. Adaptability is one of those things. There's many more that we need to use to build our business. Helena, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. Thank you. So this was great. Glad you were here. Look, like I said, do go and complete this screening tool that Scott has in the comments. If you have any problem accessing it, then please do let me know. I'll happily connect you with Scott and find a way to get the link to you. Linda, thank you so much for your kind words. Scott, this was very informative. That's Scott for you. I've been dying to bring him up now to our events for a long, long time. It's come as a guest, as you're going to call it that. But so it gives me joy for him to experience a platform where he's the co-host, where he's the star, and he actually gets to impact people in full with his expertise. Scott, thank you so much, my friend. I do appreciate you. So that we'll talk afterwards. We'll see how we go forward from here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for attending, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So, I'll sit down for 5 minutes before I get ready for my next show. My friends, if you're ever worried about the social media algorithms, join my next live, which is in a couple of hours' time. I'm sure I'm going to send you the link anyway. I guess my topic is why not stop chasing algorithms. Here's the results that really matter. How to get them. So do join us for that. Of course, I have to say, my YouTube friends, I appreciate you. Everyone who joined my YouTube channel, I'm always grateful. So make sure you like today's video. That's this video. Comment on this video, and then also subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already. And I'm sure you are. But if you're not, I would need new YouTube friends, right? Scott, do you have YouTube and all the other social medias?
I do. I have not started using it yet.
Yeah. Well, these events are a good way to create content, right?
Yeah, I will get on it. I have a plan. I'll be active by the end of next week. I will be up and running.
Excellent. Of course, you can just stream from here. Wherever you show up, then just stream. Your contribution if that's what you want people to see on YouTube. So it's good to leverage the numbers. My YouTube was flatlining for years until tumbleweeds, I call it. Tumbleweeds was playing past, nothing happened. And then once I started doing events on YouTube, my numbers have gone up through the roof. So.
Congratulations.
Everyone should be doing it. Cyrus, yes. Look forward to the algorithm live event. Let's talk about the algorithm, Cyrus. I think life is much simpler than people think it is. Trying to chase algorithms. Post at this time, don't post at this time. Follow everyone, don't follow anyone. There's so many different things. The golden hour, that just winds me up. There's so many things about algorithms that are just rubbish, is the word, right? So let's discuss on the myth. And let's come out and let's share what really works for people. So you're more than welcome to jump in, my friends. If you want a link, you can DM me. I'm going to DM my friends anyway, so hopefully you join us and add to the conversation. Scott, let's say bye to our friends. Thank you so much. Now, hopefully we'll be back here again in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
So thank you, everyone. Enjoy. I'll see you later. Bye, everyone.
Every step forward is a new beat to your drum. Achieve success with Global.Media.com and celebrate it with or without champagne or rum. Achieve success with Global.Media.